She doesn't ignore you because she's confused. She ignores you because she already decided your value, and it wasn't high enough to fight for. Most men still believe the opposite. They think her cold replies, her sudden distance, her polite excuses are some mysterious female puzzle they just haven't cracked yet. They replay the conversation, overanalyze the emoji, search for the exact moment they lost her. They tell themselves if they just explain better, try harder, show more interest, the switch will flip. It never flips, because the switch was never about interest. It was about power. Watch what actually happens when a woman starts chasing. Not the polite version she shows her friends, the real one, the late-night texts, the double messages, the sudden availability when he finally replies. The man she chases is never the one feeding her attention on demand. He is the one who treats her attention like a resource he already controls. That is the dirty trick, not a technique, not a line, a silent redistribution of power that most men never notice because they are too busy giving it away. Let me show you how it works in the small moments no one admits to seeing. You're at a bar. She's with friends, laughing, scanning the room. An average guy walks up, smiles too wide, buys the first round before she even asks. He leans in, nods at everything she says, laughs at jokes that aren't funny. Within 10 minutes, her eyes start drifting. She checks her phone. She gives short answers. She suddenly remembers she has to leave early. Now watch the other man, the one she will text later. Same bar, same woman. He doesn't approach first. He stands at the edge of the group, calm, talking to someone else. When she glances at him, he meets her eyes for exactly 2 seconds. No smile, no eager lift of the eyebrows, then looks away as if she were any other face in the crowd. Her friends don't notice, but her brain does. Inside her head, the calculation begins. He didn't light up. Why didn't he light up? Everyone else does. Is something wrong with me tonight? That single non-reaction just created a vacuum, not because he planned it, because he didn't need her validation to stay composed. And in the attention economy of modern attraction, neediness is the fastest way to devalue yourself. Most men think women test them with shit tests, those little sarcastic comments or sudden withdrawals. That's only half true. The real silent test is simpler and far more brutal. Can I control his emotions with minimal effort? If the answer is yes, she loses interest almost instantly, not because she's cruel, because the power imbalance becomes boring. She already knows the outcome. She can predict every text, every reply, every attempt to win her back. Predictability kills the chase. The bad boy doesn't pass the test by being clever. He passes it by refusing to take the test at all. He doesn't react to her pull. He doesn't chase the withdrawal. He simply continues operating at his own status level, as if her attention is optional, and that single frame shift from seeker to selector flips the entire dynamic. You've felt this yourself, even if you never named it. That moment a woman suddenly started replying faster after you stopped double texting, or when she randomly showed up at the same place after you went silent for 3 days, or when she started asking personal questions only after you had already changed the subject twice. You told yourself it was coincidence. It wasn't. You had accidentally withheld the one commodity she is used to receiving for free, unconditional male attention, and her nervous system registered the shortage. This is not about being cold or rude. It is about status signaling at the level of micro-behavior. Every glance held too long, every message answered too quickly, every compliment given too early is a public admission that your internal status is lower than hers. Women don't chase equals. They chase men whose emotional state they cannot easily influence. The dirty trick is not manipulation in the cartoon sense. It is simply refusing to play the role most men volunteer for, the role of emotional supplier. And once that refusal is consistent, something shifts beneath the surface. Her brain begins to fill the gaps you refuse to fill. She starts assigning you higher value because you behave like someone who already has options, not because you told her you do, because you act like someone who doesn't need to prove it. That is the mechanism bad boys exploit without ever explaining it to themselves. They simply never surrendered the frame, and the moment a woman senses the frame is no longer hers to control, she starts chasing. She starts chasing the moment she realizes her usual levers no longer work. Most men hand her those levers on the first interaction. A quick compliment, an eager laugh, an immediate reply, a text that says, "I had a great time," before she's even home. Each one is a small surrender. Each one tells her, "My emotional state is tied to your approval." The bad boy does none of that. He keeps his reactions measured, not because he's playing a game, because his internal economy of attention is already balanced elsewhere. His work, his circle, his own standards. Her attention is simply one input among many, and that calm independence is the most expensive signal a man can send in the modern attention market. Let's look at the texting trap, the place where power leaks fastest. She sends a short, low-effort message, "Hey," at 11 p.m. The average man feels the spike of dopamine. and fires back within minutes, trying to keep the conversation alive. He asks questions, adds emojis, steers it toward meeting up. He is supplying energy. She is consuming it. The man who makes her chase does the opposite. He waits, not as a tactic, but because his life does not pause for her breadcrumbs. When he finally replies, hours later, the message is short, self-contained, and slightly off rhythm with hers. No questions that beg for a response. No validation disguised as interest. Just enough to remind her he exists, then silence again. Inside her head, the loop starts. Why is he different? Why isn't he grabbing for my attention like the others? Is he talking to someone else right now? That uncertainty is leverage, not cruelty, leverage. Her brain begins investing thought, emotion, and imagination into a man whose behavior she cannot predict or control. The more she invests, the higher his perceived status becomes. This is why the same woman who ghosts the nice guy will double-text the man who leaves her on read. It is not logic, it is status mathematics. Eye contact reveals the same pattern in real time. Most men hold eye contact too long when they like her. They smile, they soften their posture. They signal, I am available and hoping you choose me. The composed man meets her eyes, registers her, then breaks contact first, casually, as if she were interesting but not urgent. He does not linger. He does not chase the connection with his gaze. That tiny withdrawal creates tension. Her nervous system notices the absence of the usual male hunger. In that micro moment, she feels the subtle power shift. He is not reacting to her presence the way others do. Therefore, his attention must be rarer. Therefore, it must be worth more. She begins qualifying herself in small ways, laughing a little louder at his dry comment, touching her hair, finding reasons to stay in his orbit, all without him asking for any of it. The invisible man does the reverse. He overinvests in every signal. He holds eye contact like it's a lifeline. He reacts to every shift in her mood. He becomes emotionally porous, and the moment she senses she can move his state with minimal effort, his value collapses in her eyes. Not because she's calculating it consciously, because her instincts read low status and move on. This is the unspoken dynamic no one says out loud. Women do not fall for men who make them feel safe and comfortable. They become obsessed with men who make them feel slightly off balance, because that off-balance feeling is the biological marker of higher status. The common belief that just be yourself fixes everything dies here. Being yourself only works if your default state already signals high value and self-containment. Most men's default state signals the opposite, constant approval seeking. The bad boy doesn't become someone else. He simply refuses to collapse his frame every time she tests it, and those tests are constant. She cancels plans last minute. She mentions other guys casually. She goes quiet after a strong connection. The reactive man panics, explains, overcompensates. He hands her the remote control to his emotions. The composed man registers it, stays unfazed, and continues living at his own tempo. No lectures, no guilt trips, just calm detachment. That single non-reaction is the dirtiest trick of all, because it exposes the truth she rarely admits even to herself. She does not want a man she can steer. She wants a man whose direction she has to chase. Most men will read this and still go back to over-texting, over-complimenting, over-explaining. Because the old pattern feels safer, they would rather stay comfortable and invisible than risk the discomfort of holding frame. But the few who actually absorb it start to notice something cold and real. The moment you stop volunteering your power, some women begin reaching for it. Not because you tricked them, because you finally stopped giving it away for free. Part 3, final part. The real shift happens when she starts investing more than you do, not in grand gestures, in tiny involuntary moves. She begins checking her phone when you're around but not paying attention to her. She finds reasons to prolong the conversation when you're about to leave. She mirrors your energy instead of you mirroring hers. These are not signs of sudden love. They are signs that the power balance has tilted. Because in the unspoken economy of attraction, the person who needs the interaction less always holds the higher ground. The moment you become that person, quietly, consistently, her nervous system registers the change and starts working to close the gap. Most men never reach this point. They keep supplying validation, reassurance, and attention the second she shows the slightest dip in warmth. They fear losing her, and that fear is the loudest status signal of all. The man she chases has already accepted a colder truth. Losing her is not the end of his world. It is simply data. He does not punish her with silence as revenge. He does not reward her inconsistency with extra effort. He simply remains self-contained. His attention stays expensive because his internal state does not depend on her reactions. This creates a vacuum she cannot ignore. Watch what happens in group settings, the clearest mirror of these dynamics. A woman surrounded by men who all orbit her, laughing at her stories, competing for her gaze. She feels nothing but mild boredom. Then one man in the circle speaks less, reacts less, holds his own conversation thread. He does not compete for her attention. He does not adjust adjust his posture when she speaks. Suddenly, her glances drift toward him more often. She finds ways to pull him back into the group. She asks him a direct question that requires more than a yes or no. Why? Because he refused to enter the orbit. His non-participation in the approval game made his attention feel scarce. Scarcity creates perceived value. Always has. This is not theory. It is how status works beneath the polite surface of modern dating. The dirty psychological trick bad boys use is not a trick at all. It is the disciplined refusal to trade dignity for approval. They do not chase her emotions. They do not manage her feelings. They do not explain themselves when she pulls away. They simply continue operating as if their own frame is the default setting of reality. And women, even the ones who claim they want equality and kindness, respond to that frame with involuntary pursuit. Because deep down, the female psyche does not reward the man who makes her feel most comfortable. It rewards the man whose emotional world she cannot easily access or control. That is the uncomfortable reality most men spend years avoiding. They would rather believe the fairy tale that consistent effort and emotional availability win the game. They would rather stay reactive, keep sending the good morning texts, keep asking how her day was, keep wondering why she suddenly went cold. Meanwhile, the man who quietly withdrew his need for her validation watches her behavior change without saying a word. He does not celebrate when she starts chasing. He does not relax. He simply notes it as confirmation that the power dynamic has shifted exactly as expected. Because once you see these mechanics clearly, you cannot unsee them. You notice every time you overinvest in a reply, every time you laugh too hard at her joke, every time you feel that small anxiety when she takes hours to answer. And you realize those small moments are where the entire game is decided. Not in grand gestures, not in dates, not in words. In the silent calculus of who needs whom more. Most men will read this, feel the sting of recognition, and still go back to their old patterns tomorrow. They will tell themselves, this time it will be different, while handing over their power one text at a time. The rare few will sit with the discomfort, observe their own behavior without excuses, and begin to withdraw the approval they used to give so freely, not to manipulate, but because they finally understand that real status is not given, it is kept. She only chases when she senses something worth chasing, a man whose attention is no longer cheap. And once that realization settles in, the dynamic never fully resets to the old way. Most men will ignore this and stay exactly where they are. The question is, which one are you? If this unsettled something in you, the next video will go one layer deeper. Until then, watch how you behave tonight.